It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
So my friends, get your paintbrushes out. Okay, what are we going to paint? We're going to paint our lives. Yes, we're going to paint our lives. Today, folks, it's going to be a very interesting show. I hope by the end of the show you feel good about something. I have an author on today, Tony Amico. And he wrote a book called Painting Life with Words of Encouragement. Now we're going to put the picture on the book on the screen, and a little later on I want to talk about that cover in a minute. But let me give you just one part of the book, and the book is fascinating. I read almost all of it, but one part he has broken down in different segments. It's called a lesson. Okay, a lesson I learned many years ago. Oh, I sometimes forget. But then I remembered a desperate time when I thought there was nowhere to turn. But when it comes to the lowest point, there is someone to turn over to look to, and wait for the relief from whatever you are plagued by. And then you realize the familiarity of faith. It was never in my hands to begin with. Tony, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Okay, we have a mutual friend. Unfortunately, he passed. Father Joe Sika, and of course from our conversations, you knew him extremely well. I had the pleasure of having him on the show a couple times, and we're scheduled to do a show before he died and talk about inspiration. And when I go into this, I see some of the things that he wrote about. Now, everybody has a reason for why they wrote the book, and in the book, as we go on, my friends, you'll see what I'm talking about, the different things, the concepts in here. All right, let's talk about the background of your writing, and then the conception of the book, and then what we were trying to get across here, okay?
Okay. I think to some degree I always wrote. It was a form of expression that I enjoyed, but then the tragedy came into my life. You know, everybody's going to get hit with some form of life-altering event. Hopefully it won't always be a tragedy. In my case, it was. My son had committed suicide, 14 years old. And during that period of dealing with his loss, I found it self-therapeutic to write things to myself that I thought I needed to hear, almost as if I was speaking to myself as not being myself, but being someone else. And I would write these things. Sometimes they would come into my head and I would write long sentences or paragraphs. Sometimes it'd just be a phrase, and they were discarded everywhere, in my office, in the house, on the kitchen table, on a napkin. And my wife was collecting them. And then she would find things that I had written from years ago. And she kept putting all of these things together. And a friend of ours, Laura Suma, had been noticing the writings on Facebook. And so she contacted me. She says, would you mind if I forwarded these writings to a publisher that I'm aware of? I said, fine. The next thing I know, the publisher contacted me and they asked if we had any more. And unbeknownst to me, my wife had about 18 years worth of writings. And there's the book. It's everything I wrote over that period of time. My Michael passed away in 1993 at the age of 14. And so you're seeing an accumulation of everything that I've written, not only to myself, but in trying to inspire other people and trying to help them to deal with the adversities of life through my perspective.
When you start writing these particular segments and writings, were in this book, are a majority of these writings done, or were they written after your son died, within a year or two, or were they over a period of time?
You go through a fog, and so that's not always clear. But I would think that it was probably within 6 months that I started writing more and more frequently. And then as I got into the creative process of writing, now I began exploring what I could do with it and trying to become more and more creative. And so it moved from being a self-therapeutic process into a creative process, and ultimately an outreach.
Yeah.
And then I got feedback, which encouraged me to write more.
When, you, and believe me, I could have apathy. Anybody who's a parent out there today, it's unimaginable, but didn't live what you lived, but I could imagine the hurt, particularly if it's suicide. And how did you and your wife cope with that, to be able to continue on? Because sometimes when disasters like that happen, tragedies happen, families fall apart, and they don't, which is difficult.
Well, I'd have to touch on a couple of things there. My wife now was not Michael's mom. Michael was from a former marriage. And at the time that Michael had passed away, I was divorced from his mom. And so she had to deal with his loss her own way, and I my own way. I think in certain aspects of that, there's a closeness between myself and Michael's mom that probably wouldn't have existed had it not been for this awful tragedy. Now, even though I don't see her often, I feel this love. We both lost something that we created.
Yes.
And so there's certainly no ill feeling between us.
So from this tragedy, you turned it into something that could be of help to many people, no matter what problems in life.
I would hope.
Okay. Your inspiration came from what areas, other than the loss of your son? Excuse me. You think you would have written this book if your son would be still alive today?
I've never been asked that question. I've always been creative. I've always, sketched, painted. My masonry work is creative. And so I think it's possible. I may have written something. I think I always was optimistic.
Yeah, but to what degree? Okay, because here you could sense, the feeling directly from your heart. Okay, it's like an artist who really puts his heart and soul into something, and there's a reason for that. In this book, you can see that you got soul in here. Okay, how dependent were you on your faith when this happened?
I'm grateful that I had faith prior to this. You touched on something there that rang a bell, and that wound is the open door to your soul. Without the wound, that door wouldn't have opened. At least not to the degree that it did when I started writing. So I think that how could you say there's a plus side to a tragedy? And yet you have to look for that silver lining, so to speak.
Well, I think there is a plus side. And I think the plus side is that how many lives, have you been able to make better or save by the fact that someone's reading? Because, it's something like when someone gets sick, if they have some kind of cancer or whatever, well, the doctor could tell you this, but when you talk to a person who had exactly what you have, and you're now listening because they have what you have. And so when I look at and I'm reading these, I sense the trueness, I sense the sincerity, I sense the fact that you've lived something. All right. So I think as they say, God works in funny ways. Okay, you don't know how many lives you've touched. Okay, by this, via Facebook or by the book. Okay, looking at the adversity and tragedy, you said you had your faith. All right. And I don't care what person's faith it is, I always say have some kind of substance in life so you can fall back on. How valuable was your faith when this tragedy happened?
It was invaluable. I pity those people who don't have faith. They only had themselves to fall back on. If I only had myself to fall back on, I probably would have followed my son. I could tell you an interesting story, if we could.
Sure.
After Michael had passed, for days on end, as I would open my eyes in the morning in bed, half asleep or half awake, whatever it may be, I would get this awful, awful vision of the last time that I saw my son. And not to get graphic, however, his suicide was by a weapon, my weapon. I'm the one that found him. The last sound that I heard in that moment was the sound of me picking him up from the position he laid in. Every morning this vision kept coming into my eyes. And one day, and the only time that I could tell you that I became angry at God, I said to him, if I'm going to go through the rest of my life waking up like this, I'll pick up the gun and follow him. And I have never had that vision again. And I feel as though God spoke to the devil and said, now that's enough. Hands off. And that's why I'm able to use that and speak about it, because I know that I'm never going to have that thought again. I know that he heard me. And I only feel bad for becoming angry with him at that moment. I think he understands.
Yeah, I think he does understand. Folks, I'm talking to Tony Amico, painting life with words of encouragement. And that's basically what it is, words of encouragement. We're going through a lot these days. Uncertainties, our lifestyles have changed, family problems with this COVID-19, and it's just something that you're looking to hang on to. For those of us who have faith, boy, thank God we have it. For those of you who don't, I would suggest that you look into it. One part he writes here is it's called Essentials. Stop before you start your day. Think of someone you love. Pray for someone else's need. Give thanks for those who've done this for you. Step aside and cast your first gaze upward, because all that is bestowed upon you is coming from that direction. Whether you believe it or not, I am grateful to be the one who believes. We'll be back right after this. Thanks for staying with us, folks. I'm Sam Lesante. You're watching the Sam Lesante Show. Remember, we produce 21 locally neighborhood shows. They're on our website, ssptv.com, YouTube. We're all over the place. My email is sam@ssptv.com. These are the kind of shows I like to do, folks. I have an author here, Tony Amico. He wrote the book, Painting Life with Words of Encouragement. Interesting. One of the parts of the book, and you don't have to start from start to finish. You go anywhere in this book and get some food for thought. Empty or Full is the title. Empty or full. Talent is grace. Skill is an asset. Experience, certainly helpful. Determination, necessary. And having all of these qualities, but lacking passion, desire, commitment, and humility, You are nothing but a vessel, an empty one at that. Love what you do with all your heart. Isn't this interesting, Tony, when we're talking about, Studs Terkel has a book called People. And in it, he interviews so many different people. The gas station attendant who loves his work, okay? The plumber, okay? The masoner, the airline pilot, the secretary. Everyone in life has a purpose. And I think when you have a purpose, you don't have to be like what the Joneses are, Well, look at he has a, no. Be happy what you are and enjoy who you are. I think in the book, you begin to realize that everybody is worth something. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everyone's interpretation of success is different.
Yes.
When you're young, your dreams are grand. And you think, I want to be a millionaire, or I want to be a great athlete, whatever it may be. Well, not everyone is going to become a millionaire. And not everyone is going to play in the NFL or be a wonderful athlete, whether it be a runner or weightlifter or whatever. Discipline yourself. Be kind to people. And I'm not saying that I don't have anger. There's no question. If somebody lights the fuse, I'll open both barrels. I typically regret what I say.
Yeah.
I have a rather colorful vocabulary under the right circumstances.
Yeah.
But you have to be content with what life gives you to some degree, always aspiring to be better.
Explain how this cover came about and what it means.
I was always artistic. I love color. And so when we were developing the title, I had a couple different ideas, and we centered on painting life with words of encouragement, because as an artist, painting and color seemed to me like it should be part of that cover. At the base of the cover, where you see the shade of purple, or my wife refers to as lilac, it's her favorite color. And so I wanted her color behind my name, because Valerie is the inspiration for me to, maybe the inspiration isn't the right word, maybe the encouragement to do this. I know that she thought it was worthy, and I believe that she was absolutely right. But I wanted her to have that. I do acknowledge her in the book as well, but right on the cover, that's the reason why that color is behind my name.
Tony's son committed suicide, and Tony happened to find him, and at that particular point in time, your whole life changed, all right? And then your inspiration came from putting these things together. And basically, how would you explain this book to our viewers?
It's an accumulation of thoughts. Sometimes on a good day, sometimes on a bad day. It reflects what I was feeling at that moment. It's a chronicalization of those years from 1993 until when the book was published, which I believe is about 2 years now.
Each area here, okay, this particular thing here, titled Storm Clouds, reminds me of our good friend, Father Joe Sika. And what he writes here is, these are the title of Storm Clouds. When you feel the dark clouds moving in, take it, absorb it, deal with it, and anticipate the brighter day to follow. You will emerge, perhaps wounded, but stronger. By the way, grab the faith umbrella. And I think that's interesting, because here again, I remember a friend of mine who I hadn't seen for a while, and he said, it was a rainy, terrible day. It was miserable outside, Tony, and I hadn't seen my friend in a while, and I happened to see him across the street. I'm walking across the street, complaining about the weather, moaning and groaning about the weather. It's terrible. And I said, where the hell you been anyway, Richard? And he said, I guess you didn't know. I said, what? He said, and it's raining now, miserable, sleeting. He said, I had brain surgery. I said, oh my God, I didn't know that. He said, but you know, interesting, Sam, he had a big family. He said, before I went into the surgery, the doctor said to me, Mr. So-and-so, you have a 50% chance of making it. Then he looked at me, Tony, and he said, isn't this a wonderful day? those days, you know, when you think you're going through that storm in life, I think about Richard's words, isn't this a beautiful day? In here, in all these different writings, you portray a lot of that, don't you?
Absolutely, and just on what you just said there, you know, it's funny. People say things to you and they spark thoughts. I remember saying, if someone had come to me during that day that I lost Michael, and they were to say to me, "This is the greatest day of your life," I would have said, "What's so special about today?"
Yes.
I know now.
And in here, okay, in writing these different things, these thoughts, so once a dad and all these things, you talk about coal and now very quickly, your wife was very instrumental in this book, correct?
Absolutely.
Now your mother is 95 years old.
Mm-hmm.
God bless her.
Yeah.
See, that's that good Italian wine.
Angela.
Yeah, and well, I wish her many, many years. I'm talking to Joe Amico, folks. The book is called Painting Life with Words of Encouragement. And it's interesting because everything in here, you're going to get some, you have pictures of your grandmom here, you know, and it's really nice because you get a more appreciativeness of what the book is. We're going to come back, wrap it up with Tony right after these messages. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Remember, 24/7. Go to our website, ssptv.com. You'll see all of the Sam Lesante shows. In fact, this is probably over 4,000 shows I've done so far. I'm interviewing Tony Amico. I called him Joe before, and the reason I call you Joe is because of our good friend Joe Sika. And I'm thinking of God. Yeah, God rest his soul. In the book here, okay, you know, you lost your son. He committed suicide. And then you began to write different reflections, etc. And so, in the book, the table of contents, you don't have to go from chapter 1 to chapter 20. You go anywhere, but sunrise, essentials, passing time, winds of time, tomorrow, peace in the garden, share, high school, step forward, life's concert, 5-year plan, the wooden box. Every one of these things have something coming up. Okay, you told me something about the marbles, and I said it's on page 55 here. Your son Michelangelo, very quickly, the name Michelangelo. How did you determine the name of Michelangelo?
Michael and I have a shared age in that I was 14 years old when I was in a art history class at Dunmore High School and became so enraptured in the story of Michelangelo Buonarroti as being related to me by this wonderful art teacher, Jane Breyer. And I remember at 14 years old saying, someday I'll have a son, and that's going to be his name.
And that's what happened.
And that's what happened. And when my wife at that time was pregnant, I told her, I said, you can pick out all the girls' names you want, but this is his name, if it's a boy. And the difficult thing about it all is that Michael was 14 years old when he took his life.
Yeah, yeah. And from that, I think the book, with all the inspiration you have in here, Tony, I think you're giving a lot of people different avenues in life to continue on, you know, with the trials and tribulations that we have, particularly today, in this day and age. We would never believe what's going on today in society, and
terrible. And
you need something to hold on to. Thank God people have a faith and they hang on to their faith. But in your case, you know, I think you're able to help a lot of people. And folks, the book is called Painting Life with Words of Encouragement. And I assure you, if you go to Amazon and get this book, you're going to really love it, okay? I was fortunate that Tony autographed the book, sent it to me, and we shared a mutual friend, Father Joe Sika. I wish you the best, Tony.
Thank you very much.
Please tell your wife congratulations on helping you do the book. And please give your mother a good Italian hug for me, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, you cherish them. Believe me when I say you cherish them. Tony Amico, folks, Painting Life with Words of Encouragement. Get the book. Believe me, you won't be sorry. See you next time.